After my daughter's brain injury, I would try to take her back to school. And the moment that we would pull in the parking lot, she would start shaking and she would say, "Tell me I'm beautiful, tell me I'm smart, tell me I can do this." And you know, then something amazing happened. She started praying out loud. And in the middle of her prayer, she said, "Oh, maybe I could encourage someone." And that gave her a reason to go to school because she was thinking about she could encourage someone. And so, you know, right there is a prescription to healing. When we help others, that's the quickest way to start healing. And you know, Jesus taught us that on the cross. While he's dying on the cross, the one statement he didn't really have to say out loud. He wasn't fulfilling scripture, or he wasn't fulfilling a prophecy, but he was taking care of his mother. And when he said to John to take care of his mother, he was acknowledging his mother's wounded heart. And I love that while Jesus is dying on the cross, he is helping his mom. He is thinking of others. And to me, he is giving us this prescription, this remedy of healing, that when we help others, that's when the healing really starts. And so in the pages of Beauty Marks, we learn all about that, how we can look for who could I help today. I know my daughter Jen, she rolls out of bed every morning and lands right on her knees. And she'll say, "Lord, I don't want to miss one plan that you have for me today. Who could I help today?" And that gives her purpose, a reason to get out of bed. We all need a reason to get out of bed in the morning. We all think about that. What if we prayed every morning and said, "Lord, who could I help today?" How that would change our life and give us a purpose. You know, I was thinking about what is one thing that we could do today to help someone. It doesn't have to be a huge financial commitment. It could be just writing a letter. It could just be maybe taking a meal to someone or texting them a prayer, or just the gift of your presence, sitting with a friend who's grieving or hurting, just looking for who could I help instead of who's going to help me. It will change your life. I often think of how Jesus washed the disciples' feet. You know, he's in the upper room. It's the Last Supper. He knows that he is going to the cross to die, and yet he humbles himself and he washes the disciples' feet. He even washes the feet of Judas, the one who will betray him. And then in the passage here in John 13, verse 14, I love this. Jesus says, "Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet." And then in verse 17, he says, "Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." God promises blessing when we serve others. Serving gives us a purpose that is greater than ourselves. You know, recently a friend said to me, "Linda, my scars are so painful. They're not beautiful at all. And when I hear you talk about beauty marks, it's so hard for me to relate to that because I feel like my scars are painful." And yet, this friend reaches out and helps wounded teenagers all the time. She understands their pain. She leads them to Jesus. She helps them. And I was able to show her in that moment that even though there is still pain attached to her scars and her wounds, they have become beautiful because she is a hope bearer for others, and she is protecting other teenagers from going through what she went through. And so that's how God can take our pain and use it to help someone else. And so he can give us a beauty mark. In chapter 7 in Beauty Marks, one of the most gripping statements for me on the cross is when Jesus hollered out, "I thirst," because he is the great I am, the living water, the one who commanded the water, the one who parted the Red Sea, the one who walked on water, says, "I thirst." And in that moment, he's admitting his physical need, and he's giving us permission to admit our physical needs as well. You know, so often when we have emotional pain or problems, we don't always deal with it until a physical problem emerges. Just recently, I was under a lot of stress and I wasn't taking care of myself properly, and I was gritting my teeth at night, and I wasn't going to do anything about it until the pain in my teeth got so strong I couldn't drink hot or cold things. I couldn't eat ice cream anymore. I couldn't drink coffee anymore. So then I called the doctor and did something about it. And so often that's what happens. Maybe one day we can't get out of bed, or we have an anxiety attack. The physical problem makes us have to deal with that emotional problem. And you know, one thing that I think we all probably struggle with is busyness. We can get so busy in our life with social media, with just our emails, our computers, that we forget to put margin into our life. And so I know for me, sometimes I can feel like I'm standing on a cliff, and one more thing might just push me off that cliff. And so through the study guide of Beauty Marks, you know, we have a plan where you can actually have a plan to spend time with Jesus and to add margin into your life. God knew how important it was for us to have rest in our life. It's actually one of the 10 commandments. One of his top 10 was work 6 days and then rest on the Sabbath day, worship the Lord, spend time with God, enjoying his presence. When was the last time you just sat at the feet of Jesus and talked to him or listened to him? You know, years ago, God showed me just to picture that he was sitting right there in my kitchen. And if I could just picture that he was sitting there waiting to spend time with me, wouldn't I talk to him? So often we get so busy that we just forget to take time to spend with Jesus. And the time we spend with the Lord determines how the rest of our day is going to go. And so I just encourage you to do that in the study guide of Beauty Marks. You can actually make a plan for daily, what you're going to do, one thing every day, every week, every year, of how you're going to add margin into your life, add time to worship Jesus, spend time with him. You know, I love to pray out loud in the car. You can pray out loud on your way to work. You can pray on the way to school with the kids. It's just a great thing to do. And just this last week, I was reading an article from Dr. Caroline Leaf, and there's a new study out that shows that 12 minutes of focused daily prayer for 8 weeks actually changes your brain so much that it can show on a brain scan. So when you pray and talk to Jesus, it is healing your brain. It can heal your negative and toxic thoughts. It's amazing what can happen when we pray and talk to Jesus and add some margin into our life. Also, it's so important to do things that add energy, to limit those activities that drain us, and do those things that add energy into our bucket. And so to think about, to even take time to plan and think about that. I love Psalm 63, verses 1 through 3, and David is in the desert, and he says, "You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you, in a dry and parched land where there is no water. I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, I will glorify you." You know, a relationship with Jesus is the only thing that will satisfy the deepest longings of your soul. Nothing else will fill you up like Jesus fills you up. And so I encourage you to find time to just be still and spend with him. And you know, part of that is we can ask him for what we need. If you need more healing today, I just encourage you to ask him. He wants to come to your rescue. When we were in Jerusalem, you know, we had this amazing opportunity to go to the pool of Bethesda, where Jesus healed the lame man. And you know, as we were there, it didn't look like what I thought it would look like. It was just huge. I was picturing this round pool, but it was this huge place where you could look down. And, you know, years ago, I'm sure there was tons of water, but we didn't see any water. And all of a sudden, my husband disappeared and we weren't sure where he went. And he had gone down these steps with my sister and her husband, and he came up and he had this little Germex bottle, which was all they had. My sister had a Germex bottle that they emptied, and they put some of the water in it from the pool of Bethesda. They had gone way down these steps to find where there was a little reservoir. And I know that that water doesn't heal you, but in that place we were with Jennifer. And, we were begging God for more healing for her. And so we took the water in that Germex bottle and we just put a little on her head and we prayed over her. And just as a symbol that Jesus healed people in this place, and he still has the power to heal again. And as we prayed over her, then Jennifer started praying. And for the first time in 10 years, she has never really been that aware that she has a brain injury. She's never really had emotional pain. In God's grace, he spared her from the emotional pain. She had a lot of physical pain, and so she would often walk into walls and hurt herself and cry because she couldn't see very well. But she never cried because she was sad for herself. But this day at the Pool of Bethesda, she started crying out this gut-wrenching cry, and it was like God was healing her right before our eyes. He was allowing her to know the emotional pain, and he was healing new pathways in her. And she started crying out to him for more healing. And it was a gut-wrenching cry, and yet in the middle of her prayer, she changed from more healing to more of him. And I thought, that's so beautiful. Isn't that what our wounds do? They make us run to Jesus. And yet, in our need for more healing, we end up needing more of him. He's the one that satisfies the deepest longings of our soul. And as you watch this prayer of Jen's, it's heart-wrenching, but I just want you to know that God has healed her in new ways since she prayed this prayer. This past year, she has started reading. She read a whole book. Her short-term memory is healing. She just had a good report at the cancer doctor that her thyroid cancer seems to be under control. And I just want to encourage you to ask God for more healing and to ask God for more of him, more of his presence.
It's such an honor to be here. We're asking for more, Lord. I know you can, Daddy. I know you can. So why wouldn't you, Lord? I just need you. You're our hope. You're our purpose. Please touch my body, my eyes, and just please heal me from the inside out. Father God, to be anointed with this water, it means so much. I know there's power in it. And it's just the miracles you did in the Bible. I know you're not done yet, Lord. Please touch my cells, heal the cancer, the thyroid count. I want to pray that you remove the nodule. And I know you could do even so much more, Lord. Heal my eyes, heal everything. Lord, you're our sustainer. You're my hope. You're the reason I get up in the morning. And thank you for this time. I'm honored. I feel like the luckiest person in the world. And I just want to say I love you. I love you. Thanks, Daddy, for listening. In your name, Lord Jesus. Amen.